Ewohimi and Iyenuhoro arrived Udo town that same day, just in time for the marriage ceremony of Arhuan the giant to his new Udo bride. The town was alive with excitement, and the streets were decorated with palm leaves and flowers. The ceremony was taking place in the palace compound, where Arhuan and his bride would exchange vows in front of their families, friends, and well-wishers. The bride was wrapped in beautiful fabrics, made of the softest of velvet, the thinnest lace, and the most beautiful George fabric. Her neck and wrist were also adorned with coral beads, known as Iyenuhoro and Obo. The Okaegbe, the eldest head of the bride's family, took charge of the ceremony. He blessed the union and prayed for the couple's happiness and prosperity. Then the celebration was in full swing, and guests enjoyed a sumptuous feast of local delicacies, including palm wine, kola nuts, bowls of yams soaked in palm kernel oil, and other edible treats. Dancers came out, sashaying left to right in unison with singers belting out traditional Edo songs as they made their way through the town. As the night wore on, Iyenuhoro sat among the party guests, enjoying the festivities. But her enjoyment was short-lived when she noticed Ewohimi staring at her. She couldn't tell if the giant had taxed him with spying on her or if the general simply disliked her. Furious at his unrelenting gaze, she tried to stare him down, but he held her gaze, unable to take it anymore. She stood up and marched over to him. "You can't intimidate me," she spat out, ready to give him a piece of her mind. But before she could utter another word, the warrior did the unexpected. He planted a long, deep kiss on her lips. "How dare you," she began, but he placed his fingers on her lips. "Shut up. You are too beautiful to be this furious." Shocked at his audacity, Iyenuhoro pushed his chest back. "How dare you," she wanted to say again, but the warrior grabbed her and pulled her towards him. "Don't move," he said. "There's a snake right behind you." And in a flash, he had grabbed the head of the slippery animal off the tree branch and held it up for her to see. But she scoffed. "I'm not afraid of no snakes. In fact, forest animals are my friends," Ewohimi chuckled. "You can see why." They stared at each other in silence, their eyes locked in a fiery battle. Two souls stood on the precipice of a tempestuous encounter. A storm brewed in their hearts, fueled by a potent blend of disdain and desire, their bodies poised in a palpable energy, drawing them inexorably closer. Then, as if surrendering to the intoxicating dance of fate, he extended his hand to hers. In that moment, they discovered the delicate balance between love and war. His touch, once an instrument of destruction, now transformed into a conduit of irresistible tenderness. Her eyes entwined in his, and then he led her to his chambers. The wedding celebration of their enoge continued all through the night till the next day. All in all, it was a great day, and within a couple of months, the birth of Kpamabiri, their firstborn, was announced with joyous celebration all through the Udo community. It wasn't long after that Onioni, his second son, was born, and his birth also was a joyous celebration. The giant Arhuan had everything he could ever want: a family, a palace, a band of loyal mercenaries, and people whom he ruled over on behalf of the Oba. His sons also grew up, and they too were brave warriors. Yet he was restless, yearning for more. He wanted to be the next Oba after his father, and nothing could stand in his way. Odion, a young hunter seeking to curry favor with the giants and join the Asaka warriors, took it upon his hands to assassinate Prince Osawe, the heir to the great Benin kingdom. For weeks he lay in hiding, observing the prince's coming and goings. Before long, he knew his routine by heart. One day in the forest, while the prince was passing by, Odion the hunter hid and waited in a bush. With a swoosh, poison arrow shot through the air, piercing Okoro Osawe's abdomen. The Okoro dropped to the ground and was quickly rushed to his mother in the area. Oloi Idia was a woman prepared for anything. In her hut, she had herbs specially made to heal her son. It wasn't long before she had brewed a strong concoction for her son, and in no time he was healthy and strong. News of Okoro Osawe's assassination attempt reached the ears of Arhuan, and in no time, the Asaka had found Odion, the young hunter. Immediately, they dragged him to the palace compound, and Arhuan sentenced him to be executed. Then, he sent a special envoy to Benin Kingdom to help repair relations between him and his brother. But Queen Idia didn't trust the giants, so she warned her son not to fall for the giant's tricks. Everyone knows that he sent that young man to assassinate you. Then he killed him, so no one would suspect that he had a hand in your assassination attempt. But I know what he's capable of. Okoro Osawe was perplexed. So what should I do now? He said. Let us send a message that he cannot act on, not while the Oba lives. So Okoro Osawe had the special envoy from Udo executed, and the bad news was carried back to Arhuan. Arhuan received his brother's message loud and clear, so he called on Iyenuhoro, who was now married to Ewohimi, to teach him magic. Moons later, Oba Ozolua passed on and was laid to rest. Arhuan, on receiving the news, quickly moved to declare himself Oba Arhuan. He declared Udo town capital of Great Benin and called for the Uzoma chiefs to crown him. But Oloi Idia intercepted the summons. She called on Chief Oliha and the council to hasten with the coronation of Okoro Osawe in Benin City and make him the legitimate ruler of Benin Kingdom. The Uzoma chiefs quickly held a ceremony, and Okoro Osawe's title was changed to Oba Esigie in accordance with the will of Oba Ozolua. Enraged by this act, the rebellious giant moved with his troops to attack Oba Esigie and Benin City. He wanted to take control of the capital, but Queen Idia was ready. She had long since reached out to the Enije of Uromi, Omu, Uroho, and Esi to join forces with her son to defeat his enemies. Together, they repelled Arhuan and his troops back. Tensions between the kingdoms was high. Oba Esigie was ready to launch a terrible counterattack against the Enogie of Udo. But Oloi Idia, the wise queen mother, cautioned him against it. My son, it is not wise to attack an enemy when they most expect it. Many of Arhuan's men are farmers, and this is the planting season. Wait till they have returned to their farms, then you attack. My spies tell me that he is slowly growing mad with bitterness. The right time will come, you will see. Iye, the right time is now. Yes, I don't have much experience with wars, but I have guns. I also have great warriors in the royal army who have won wars with my father. And I have you, Oba Esigie said. If that is so, then you must do as I say, his mother said. Arhuan and his army will prepare to attack us, but we know he won't do it now. He will wait till after planting season. Right now, all you can do is secure the kingdom. Taking his mother's advice, Oba Esigie ordered Benin artisans to dig a moat to strengthen the city's walls. The sound of shovels hitting the earth echoed across the kingdom as the moat was dug deeper and wider. Meanwhile, Arhuan had become a desperate ruler. It so happened that Arhuan received news that one of his closest advisors had fallen in love with a young lady from a rival village. Arhuan was so paranoid that he believed the advisor was selling information about his daily movements, and so he had the advisor executed. The news of this desperate attempt by their ruler shocked Udo community. But that wasn't all. The giant placed a decree that taxes be hiked, and anyone who refused to pay the new taxes was imprisoned, and their properties were seized and given to loyal relatives of Arhuan. Slowly, the people began to fear their Enogie. Arhuan also became increasingly erratic and unpredictable, which led to poor decision-making and chaos. He made impulsive decisions without considering the consequences. It wasn't too long after Oba Esigie had erected the moat that the erratic giant gathered his elite warriors and the whole Udo army to attack his brother again. General Ewohimi was skeptical. But Arhuan had become stubborn and difficult to reason with. So, by the break of dawn, the men of Udo marched to Benin City. And as they tried to climb the high walls, the royal army sneaked up behind them and used that sneak attack to kill many of Arhuan's men. It was a long battle, and the giant lost many of his warriors, including Kpamabiri, his first son. In the end, the giant was forced to retreat to Udo, humiliated and defeated. On hearing of the passing of her first son, Arhuan's wife was overwhelmed with grief and pain. The women of Udo community stayed with her for days and nights, beating their chests in sympathy at such a waste of young life. Planting season came, and the people of Udo were busy on their farms planting crops. Oba Esigie seized the opportunity to attack his brother and end his rebellion once and for all. He marched the royal army to attack the community of Udo and lay waste to the town. But just before they reached Udo town, they were spotted by an Udo shepherd. The shepherd slipped away from his cattle and ran back to warn Arhuan and his kingsmen. The giants called General Ewohimi and quickly demobilized a small army of Asaka warriors. Iyenuhoro met Ewohimi at the warriors' lodge where he was addressing the troops. She hadn't had enough time to prepare amulets for everyone, so she slipped her husband an amulet specially made, but he refused to wear it. It should be given to one of these brave warriors, he insisted. She lashed out at him. I have seen the future, and Arhuan will not win this war. All the better to give this to one of the brave warriors. Then he called out to a young warrior and handed him the amulet. Take this. My wife made it specially for you, he told the warrior. But Iyenuhoro had come prepared. She took out a smaller amulet, more potent than the first, and slipped it into her husband's armor pouch. Then she hurriedly walked out of the lodge, making her way to the palace compound to check on Arhuan's wife. There she met his wife crying. Arhuan's wife, tired of the unending bloodshed, was pleading with him to make peace with his half-brother. My husband, we must avoid a fight with Benin, she pleaded. We just do not have enough men to fight, and all this war is just pointless. Please let your hatred go. Are you saying I should surrender? The giant asked. I am saying that you make peace with your brother. I believe he does not want this war, she cried out. Of course he doesn't want this war. He knows I will defeat him in battle. The only way there will be peace is when I get back the throne that was stolen from me, Arhuan's voice thundered. Then do not take our son with you, I beg you, she pleaded with her knees and tears. Arhuan agreed. He couldn't risk losing another son. Outside, their last son, Onioni, dressed in war armor, stood waiting for his father with General Ewohimi and the Udo army. But Arhuan would not allow him to follow them into battle. No, son, not today. Stay with your mother. Be sure to protect her and our people while I am away, he instructed Onioni. But Era, how can I stay back with the women and children when we do not have enough men for the battle? His son protested. But the giant understood his wife's worries. She did not want to lose both her husband and son on the same day. And though he did not let it show, he was afraid too. My son, you will have other opportunities to fight, but not today. Today you must stay back and protect the women, children, and old people of Udo, he explained. Then, with Ewohimi at his side, Arhuan and the Udo army marched towards Oba Esigie and the royal army. The two armies met and clashed by the river Ose, which separates Udo town and Benin city. The soldiers of both armies charged into each other, fighting with machetes, spears, shields, bows, and arrows, as well as dark magic. The Oba and a few royal soldiers also fought with Dane guns. Arhuan and the Udo army did not have such effective firearms. Oloi Idia also accompanied her son to battle, where she used her magic against Arhuan and the Udo army. Arhuan wore a magic bead necklace that gave him strength and protected him against Oloi Idia's magic, and so he fought bravely. If it had been another time, the royal army would have been no match for him and his men. But as you know, power always changes hands. And so the giant watched his warriors crumble to their deaths. The royal army had more soldiers in the battle than the Udo army. The guns gave the royal army an advantage in the battle because they were deadlier and faster than the bows and arrows on the battlefield. For a while, the warriors of Udo fought bravely, and it was a gruesome battle with neither side winning. General Ewohimi charged at two Benin soldiers, pulling them down from their horses and driving a spear into their hearts. But then, from his behind, one soldier after another jumped onto the Asaka warrior, beating on him until they had overpowered him before another soldier carried his spear and drove it into the warrior's heart. In the thick of the battle, Arhuan fought bravely, using his bare hands to tear soldiers from limb to limb. As the battle raged on, unknown to the giant, his son Onioni had disobeyed his father's order and joined the fray. Fighting bravely alongside the Udo soldiers, he caught the attention of Oloi Idia, who was closely watching from afar. The Queen Mother had been attempting to use her magic to blind the giants, but her efforts were in vain. Determined to turn the tide of the battle in their favor, Oloi Idia decided to use her magic against the giant's son. With a swift incantation, she made Onioni appear like a soldier of the royal army, hoping to deceive the Udo soldiers. And it worked. In the heat of the battle, Udo soldiers noticed Onioni fighting. Mistaking him for the enemy, they attacked him with fierce intensity. Onioni fought valiantly, but the sheer number of Udo warriors surrounding him was too great. They struck him with a fatal blow which ended his young life. When they discovered what they had done, they wailed, "We have killed our Enoge's son." In the thick of the battle, the giant realized what had happened and rushed to gather his son in his arms. "Onioni, my son, why did you not listen to me?" he cried out. He held the lifeless body of his son, wailing in disbelief at such a pointless death. Sadly, the tragedy so weakened the giant that he led the Udo army to confusion on the battleground. One by one, the Udo soldiers began to abandon the battle and flee back home. Seeing this, Arhuan knew the battle was lost, so he carried the body of his son and retreated to Udo. In Udo, news of the lost battle and death of Onioni reached the ears of his mother. She was so shattered by the news that she walked into a river and drowned herself. When Arhuan got to Udo and heard about his wife, he broke down and cried bitterly. So desperate did he want to be Oba that he did not heed the advice of those around him. The giant was full of sorrow and regret as he had lost two sons in the war and also lost his wife. He wished he had earlier followed the advice of his wife, but now it was too late. Devastated, he walked into Lake Odike, near the river where his wife drowned herself. And to this day, the people of Udo believe that the giant never died and still lives in the lake, awaiting the day he will avenge those who wronged him. Then Iyenuhoro, on hearing that the war was over, waited till night time to retrieve her husband from the battlefield. She knew exactly where his body was and ran with a horn lamp to get him. On the battlefield, she spotted him in the distance, his body lying lifeless, surrounded by the dead bodies of other soldiers. She glanced at his chest and saw that he was alive. Breathing a sigh of relief, she carefully dragged his injured body to the river. Then she poured water from the river into a tiny pouch, murmured incantations into the pouch, and poured its contents onto the lips of her husband. In no time, he gasped and coughed. Ewohimi opened his eyes to see his wife looking down at him. "You saved me. Thank you." "But what about the Enogie?" he asked. Tears welled up in Iyenuhoro's eyes. She could barely bring herself to tell him of the horrors that took place. Tomorrow they could speak about the war, but right now, her husband needed to rest. Back in Odo, Oba Esigie reclaimed the town and continued his reign over the rest of the kingdom. The Oba then went on to conquer several neighboring kingdoms and became a great king. Oloi Idia helped her son to win many more wars, and she became the most powerful queen in the history of Benin Kingdom. The end.